Thanks for coming. I'm Adam Ortolf. I'm really glad to be here. I want to talk about a couple things today. I think I'll probably spend maybe 10 or 15 minutes kind of speaking at you, but I'd really like to spend more time, having a Socratic open Q&A. I think I'm not really sure if I'm the only mining-focused talk at Bitcoin Day, but if you have Bitcoin mining questions, I want them to be able to get answered here, and so at least asked into the open. And so I'll start by telling you a little bit about myself and how I got here, who I am. I'm not nobody special. I'm not the smartest guy in the room by a long shot. I had graduated college and kind of like chased a dream in the tech world, and that didn't pan out. But I ended up in the oil field, and while working in oil and gas, I figured out and studied Bitcoin mining, right, how Bitcoin was produced, and I had seen the harmony there, the synergy between Bitcoin's energy intensity is what I would call it, right? It's tethered to a kilowatt hour. It's tethered to the generation of power. That made sense to me because I was working in the oil field. I was reporting on energy being produced every day, and so I had a good understanding of what that was. And I kind of fell backwards into a web search that led me to a company called Upstream, and that's what I work for now. I started out as a customer of theirs. Founder Steve Barber, he's a petroleum engineer, mechanical engineer, who is, for the last 5-6 years, have been building to try to allow oil and gas producers to easily interact with the Bitcoin network by mining, right? And so we build products to help oil and gas producers mine Bitcoin, become Bitcoin miners, so that they can figure out what this thing is and realize how well it pertains to them. And so I was a customer of theirs because I saw a guy that was building exactly what I wanted to do, which was mine Bitcoin in the oil field. And I got in contact with him, and just through my sheer excitement and timing, there wasn't very many people calling him, there wasn't very many people talking about this. He was having a lot of people laugh at him, and as I was at the time. But then we got to a place where I was able to prove this concept. I was able to prove that, hey, the Bitcoin network is actually a net positive for energy production, certainly in the sense that it brings a market to stranded energy around the world and allows energy then to be more properly priced, which is the topic I really want to talk about today, which is, what is the problem? Why is there an issue, and how does Bitcoin solve it? The issue is that a kilowatt hour hasn't been properly priced for a long time. A lot of things haven't been properly priced for a long time. Real estate, equities, there's absolute monetary premiums, there's monetary discounts. The entire market is obfuscated, but a kilowatt hour is a unit of energy. It hasn't changed, it won't change. And 1,000 years from now, a kilowatt hour will be the exact same as it is today. And that has been bastardized to the nth degree. And what Bitcoin does, what Bitcoin is an immutable signal to anybody producing energy that there's another market that will pay you a fair rate for generating power. Nobody can stop you from participating with this network. Nobody can stop you from selling electricity to the Bitcoin network. When energy producers become aware of this, and when they become proficient in understanding the Bitcoin network, energy will begin to get properly priced, right? And it will be in the sense that markets will get created around energy production to arbitrage all of the middlemen, all of the regulators, all of the subsidies. Bitcoin's going to usher in that way. And so I want to talk today about a couple of things. One, how does Bitcoin kind of solve this problem of improperly pricing energy? And two, why is improperly pricing energy such a problem? Right? And so let me start it this way. Much in the same way that a dollar or a dollar price on a stock or on an ounce of gold is what drives demand and supply of that, physical good or stock. When it comes to energy, the value of a kilowatt hour, the value of a barrel of oil is what gets energy producers to wake up, go drill wells, go put up solar panels, go build wind turbines, hydroelectric facilities. For certainly the last 20 years, but really the last 50 years, we've seen another, we've seen another unit of account get brought into the equation, and that unit of account is carbon dioxide, right? And with carbon dioxide, we've created another currency. And even if you're generating energy and you're losing you're losing dollar value, as long as you're gaining enough carbon dioxide value, you can offset this what we would call economic loss with this virtue gain. And through that process, what we found is now there's a massive spectrum of ways in which to generate electricity that are, some are efficient, some are not. Really, we can't compare because there's all these other factors that come into play, all these subsidizations that bastardize the price. And so how do we kind of solve this? How do we start to educate? How do we get energy producers involved? I kind of want to show you how we've done it for the last 5 years and what I work on every day. So I want to show you some things in Upstream data that we build and kind of talk about what we do. And so in oil and gas, many maybe don't know, but there's a lot of wasted energy, right? And this happens in every energy production sector, but certainly in oil and gas, there's an incredible amount of wasted energy in the form of natural gas getting flared, natural gas getting vented is what it can be classified as. And the reason that this occurs is because natural gas is quite abundant, incredibly energy dense. You can produce a lot of power with a little bit of natural gas. And quite frankly, we produce a lot more natural gas than even we demand, than we could possibly demand. But it's so cheap on the market price for natural gas is so cheap that for the most part, it's not worth it to bring that gas to market, right? So a lot of the times you drill a well and you find some oil, and that oil is valuable enough that you're gonna produce the well. But alongside that oil, there's a bunch of gas. And in order to sell that gas, you have to build a 50-mile pipeline, right? You have to get all these approvals, you have to spend $100 million. Well, you look at the price of gas and you're like, well, if we spend $100 million to build a pipeline, we're gonna make $50 a day selling our gas, like, we're never gonna make our money back. We're not gonna build a pipeline. But the oil is still valuable, so we're just gonna burn the gas. We're just gonna waste it. And we're gonna sell the oil and just deal with that. The gas will just be, it's a write-off, right? It's just like a cost of doing business. Well, with Bitcoin mining, what happens is you can get a price for that gas. You can generate power on site with that very energy-dense natural gas. You can generate a lot of electricity. And now, as long as you have an internet connection, you can sell that electricity to the Bitcoin network. Effectively, you're selling your gas, you're bringing your gas to market at the wellhead. And so this was something that Steve Barber had realized as being a petroleum engineer and someone that learned about Bitcoin early on. He started building for this future in 2015. And today, I'll show you guys a couple pictures of these. We built what we call hash huts. And so this is a portable Bitcoin mine. This is a 8x8 foot building capable of housing 128 M-S9s or anywhere between 92 and 96 of the newer generation machines. So you could spend, $1.5 million on computers just to house in this building. This is something that's designed for the oil field. It's designed for really harsh environments, harsh climates. It's forced air cooled. It's something that is pragmatic for oil and gas producers. Oil and gas producers, this is not about being high tech. This is not about bringing fancy technology and new age money to the oil field. This is about solving the really practical issue of stranded energy, of energy that cannot be economically brought to market. So what we build is pragmatic tools that oil and gas producers would have a very easy time maintaining. This is a very common oil field structure design. Obviously, it's got slanted roof. It can deal with snow. It's gonna obviously the building's gonna create heat, so it melts everything off. When it comes to heat, you can vent exhaust upwards and outwards and maximize airflow. Really, at the end of the day, we're giving them something that's about as close to plug and play as you can get with being in the oil field and being an on-site piece of oil field equipment. When it comes to maintenance, this is what is so beautiful. What I knew the very first time that I plugged in a Bitcoin miner back in 2018, I was using it to heat my 600 square foot apartment. Very, very noisily, right? So it's very noisy. I could hardly sleep, but I slept only because I was too tired to stay awake. When I plugged this in, I realized that Oilfield could definitely do this, because really the key to running a Bitcoin miner or a Bitcoin mine is about power generation, right? Until you get to a really crazy scale where you need to network tens of thousands of units, and you're talking about megawatts and megawatts of power, until you're at that scale, this is pretty much like plugging in computers. When it comes to mining in the oil field, 95% of the attention is on the engine. It's on the power generation. What is turning natural gas into electricity? Typically it's a motor with a generator. And that's something the oil field, they're professionals at. For the last 30, 40 years, oil and gas producers have been generating power on site to run their heater treaters, their separators, their jack pumps, their lights during the nighttime. They know how to generate power on site. What they don't know how to do is, like, what these computers need. What do they cost? How much power? Right, so we solved that problem for them, give them kind of a plug and play. And what we found is oil and gas producers really like Bitcoin. They like profitability, right? They like the ability that they can drop this building somewhere on site, power up that engine. That red building there, that's a 400 kilowatt Taylor reciprocating motor. It's a 400 kilowatt engine there. The building that we built, that's an 8 by 16 foot hash hut. Holds like 256 miners. I think this deployment had 256 S9s. So instead of earning nothing on their gas and just burning it, now they're earning the equivalent of like 3 times the pipeline price. Right. So instead of selling to the pipeline, guys are now looking at mining Bitcoin with gas that they can sell, rather than gas that they're not just gas that they're wasting, gas that they're selling. They're looking at siphoning off their pipeline contract and looking at mining Bitcoin. So what we're effectively seeing is a modular aspect of price arbitrage on a kilowatt hour, or an MCF, what's called an MCF of natural gas, 1,000 cubic feet of 1,000 BTU heating value gas. And so it's happening slowly. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing oil and gas producers make decisions. They look, on one hand, I can build, spend this much money, build a pipeline, get this price for my gas via the pipeline company. Or on the other hand, I could buy this equipment, I could potentially get this price for my gas, or any variation of it, right? This is a dynamic market, as is this. Where do I go? How do I optimize? The bottom line is, this is a part of the equation now. The sheer optionality of Bitcoin mining changes the decisions that get made on behalf of an energy producer. Because now it's on the table. Now it's, hey, midstream company, hey, pipeline company. If you don't give me a good price for my gas, I'm just gonna mine Bitcoin with it. Okay, go fuck yourself, right? I don't need your pipeline anymore. Up until this point, that might sound funny today, up until this point, pipeline companies got to kind of walk into the room, be the strong arm, and tell oil and gas producers, hey, if you produce gas, you're gonna give me this price, otherwise, like, what are you gonna do with it? There's nothing you can fucking do with it. You can burn it. Or you can mine Bitcoin now. So the pipeline companies are going to have to play fair. The upstream producers are going to have optionality. They're going to have more tools in their belt to sell hydrocarbons, to compete, and ultimately to produce energy, right? And so this is how Bitcoin interacts with energy. This is the equation, the headline you might see of Bitcoin. Bitcoin mining is at scale large. Utilizes a lot of energy, therefore is bad for the environment. It's a falsifiable equation, right? Absolutely falsifiable. And at the end of the day, it starts with the fact that 1 unit of energy consumption or conversion, sorry, this microphone is terrible, but yeah. 1 unit of energy consumption or conversion doesn't equal 1 unit of environmental destruction. Right? There's way too much nuance in between to just make that equation. So what I want to open it up to the room today is, considering this information, considering the fact I'm building out every day the ability to, 1, not only empower oil and gas producers to have optionality with where they sell the resources that they risk and sacrifice to produce, but 2, they're learning about Bitcoin, right? Because now they're participating in the Bitcoin network. Now they know how much it costs to produce a Bitcoin. I mean, I know oil and gas producers that know way better how much it costs to produce a Bitcoin than anybody in the room, right? Like these are smart people. These are petroleum engineers, chemical engineers, geologists. These are not dumb people. And they're getting a first-hand look. They're economically incentivized to learn about this network, become proficient with this network, and in turn, what they're going to do is they're going to compare it to the dollar system, and they're going to stop wanting dollars. I mean, I believe honestly, there's a likelihood that oil and gas producers will stop selling their oil for dollars. They will demand Bitcoin for their barrels of oil, for their MCF of gas, for their kilowatt hours, right? And that's the future we're heading to. And it's very early. I'm just seeing the first guys realize the picture. We have 160 Bitcoin mines employed as of today, and there'll be tens of thousands by 2028, right? So, given this information, right, given these realities, right, not hypotheticals, these realities, you know, what questions do people have? What challenges do people have? Yeah.
What level of like internet connection do you need out in the middle of nowhere?
Nothing. That's what's sweet about Bitcoin, right? That's why we keep the block size at 1 megabyte. You need like 2 megabytes down, 1 megabyte up. That's the bandwidth you need. No. Our biggest Bitcoin mines that have 640 S9s, I think their data usage per month is maybe like $180. They're making like $3,000 a day.
How long does it take for them to earn back their investment?
It's all too many variables, right? I mean, certainly because of the fact that they're not just varying models of Bitcoin miners that you can deploy, but varying generations of models, right? And so, too many variables. What I can tell you is it's better than a pipeline in many of these cases, and a lot of that just has to do with geography, right? Because a lot of these just, you know, the location of the particular oil well is in the middle of fucking nowhere. You know, it's a 2.5-hour drive down a dirt road. There's no one in sight, and so to get a pipeline out there, to get infrastructure there is just not pragmatic. It's never going to be a solution. Even if natural gas went to $100, you're still not even going to want to build it. It's not going to be worthwhile because you can't pick it up and move it. But a Bitcoin mine, you can place it there until you run out of gas, pick it up, go drop it on another well, carry on, right? It's a movable, reusable, downstream market for natural gas. Yeah.
All right, I'm a software engineer, so I'm trying to think about what is being built or what can be built to get the data that proves what you're saying about the value of this into a public API that anybody can plug into and start to see these metrics. And so it's undeniable. Anybody in the world can start looking at this, quantifying, and start to make business decisions about how this can help them, whether they're using natural gas or whatever type of source of energy they're using.
I think there is. I think there's some great, there's some holistic analysis. One person I would point you toward is Lynn Alden. Lynn Alden did a comprehensive look at Bitcoin's, you know, I think it's, you know, like the final word on Bitcoin's energy use or something like that. Because Nick Carter did one that was, you know, he's written the final word a couple times already. And you know, this is a key point as to why I even ended up here with a microphone in my hand. Is, you know, I was like an anonymous Twitter account. I didn't want to talk to people about this stuff really, but I was doing it. I had invested in a Bitcoin mine, and on Twitter and on public forums, I was seeing people start to call out Bitcoin's energy usage. Right? I started to see this FUD develop, this narrative that Bitcoin is going to destroy the planet via its mining energy use. And while there were some people that were combating that FUD, right? Some Bitcoiners, some noble guys out there were saying things like, yeah, well, how much energy does the US dollar use? And it's a pretty good argument, right? It's not a bad argument, right? It's like, well, hey, if Bitcoin uses this, what does the US dollar use? Let's try to, you know, be fair. But it's a pretty immeasurable and unprovable response. But I got in there and I was able to send them a picture or a video of my Bitcoin mine consuming wasted methane, increasing air quality, right? Reducing air emissions, and being able to mine Bitcoin. And I was like, here, look, like right now I'm doing this. I can show you how Bitcoin's impact is actually positive. And that shut people up, right? And people started reaching out to me saying, you know, what are you doing? I want to do analysis about this. I want to talk about this. And so that's kind of where it started, right? We have started. I'd say Lynn Alden's paper is phenomenal. She mentioned that I think they even have some pictures of some hash huts in there.
If we had like a website where you could see the amount of money they were making real time versus the energy input that anybody could just go to and watch that happen.
Effectively, every Bitcoin calculator out there is that website. Because in a way, it all comes down to, again, kilowatt hours. What can you generate a kilowatt? What is the cost of producing a kilowatt hour? Right? And whether you're doing it in the oil field by bringing natural gas into an engine, creating like mechanical motion, generating electricity, and then at the end of the month, seeing how many kilowatt hours you produced, what was your cost of changing the oil of that engine? What was your cost of changing the filter? And take all your costs, divided by your kilowatt hours and see. By the way, we've done this. If you're generating power, especially on flare gas, if you're under 2 cents. Engine maintenance is, all depends on what engine, if you're using a turbine or a recip. But again, there's variables in between that would make an API tough. It's not a clean, 15 variable equation. It's a little dirtier than that. But what you're talking about is how do we put numbers to this, right? And that's what I'm doing. Because there's nuance, because there's too many layers, and because every oil and gas well is different. Like when you ask me how much electricity can you produce with this much gas, I need to see the composition of the gas, right? I need to see the gas analysis. Like what percentage is methane? What percentage is hectanes, pentanes, ethanes? Right? Do you have heavy gas? Do you have 1,300 BTU high heating value gas? Right? There's a million different kinds of variables, right? Your altitude at which you're combusting a molecule changes the kilojoules that it creates, right? So an engine at 1,300, or 13,000 feet above sea level is going to produce differently than an engine at sea level. And so there's all these kinds of things that do go into those minute costs. But at the end of the day, it's very practical, pragmatic, and appropriate, right? It's competitive, if not outright fucking awesome. It's not. I've got oil and gas producers, for example. I spoke with a customer earlier this week, and it's a cool story. So this producer is it's a mom and pop shop. They've got 16 wells. Grandma, and that's all I know her by is grandma. Grandma really runs the company because she inherited it from grandpa who founded the company, and she kind of makes all the decisions still, right? And grandson is on the phone with me, trying to get their first Bitcoin mine on some gas that they're just wasting somewhere, out in the middle of nowhere. And the numbers, and by the way, they have a Bitcoin mine, and the numbers that we're talking about are this. They had a well, one of their, I think it was 14 or 16, right? One of their wells was producing $4,000 a month in oil, right? It's not much. It's really not. That's what's called a stripper well in the oil and gas industry, okay? It's a well that just is barely bubbling some oil. You send a truck out once every 20 days because there's not enough oil to send one out any more frequently than that. But they were flaring 50,000 cubic feet of gas per day. And with that 50,000 cubic feet of gas and $100,000 investment of engines, Bitcoin miners, and a building, right, a hash hut, they created an $11 MCF market. So 50 MCF, $11, so they were making $550 a day on the gas, right? So now you're talking about 16, 17 grand a month on the gas, $4,000 on the oil. Right, so that well was worth to them 50 grand a year. Now that well, just the gas alone, right? We're talking about what, 200 grand a year? That allows them to hire another employee. Get that one employee who's been sticking it out with them a work truck. It changes their quality of life. And so then they call me back and they want 45 buildings, and I tell them let's take this one step at a time, right? Let's not get overzealous, let's not get wrecked, let's not get manic, let's be pragmatic. This is the oil field. When you get fancy out in the oil field, you get wrecked out in the oil field. You go broke out in the oil field. And so this is a perfect place for Bitcoin to marry, right? And the way I say it is, Bitcoin mining and upstream energy production, they're destined for one another, right? That nothing can keep them from existing in harmony and leveraging each other to become better. And so we're gonna find a lot of people fighting it, and they might fight it with regulation, they might fight it with narratives about planets being destroyed and civilization and things. But at the end of the day, the force is occurring, the market forces are at play, and these two industries are marrying currently. A million things are going to need to be built out. Insurance, ancillary, lending products. There's going to there's going to be industries surrounding this. But the oil and gas, the upstream energy industries, they're about to become the best Bitcoin miners of the decade. Right? This is no longer about efficiency and chips. This is about sourcing economic energy and marginal power production costs. Right? Do you have a question about that?
Yeah. What kind of effect does this have on the producer's ability to mitigate volatility of prices?
Well, I mean, I think it's. I mean, in many cases, this is just an absolute economic no-brainer, right? When we talk, oftentimes I hear people say that Bitcoin is an asymmetric bet, right? And asymmetric meaning there's little downside, very great upside. In this case, certainly because of Upstream Data's, what we build in Upstream Data, we build all the way down to 50 kilowatt, little 5.7 liter V8 Chevy engines. So little $50,000, $60,000 setups that anybody can afford. We also build up to megawatt builds, megawatt buildings that we can deploy tons of miners on. But it's an economic no-brainer in the sense that if you have flare vent gas, you're earning $0. Oftentimes you're being fined for it. If you're even able to make $1 an MCF, guys get excited, right? And so the upfront investment is pretty attractive.
And then real quickly too, do you see interest in states that depend or at least get a lot of mineral revenue? Are they looking at this at all?
Oh yeah, they're all over it. Like Wyoming, okay, for example.
I roughed that in Wyoming for a while.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So the Powder River up in Wyoming, it's gonna. I predict this in 2018 because I was doing the production analysis and I saw the gas reports from all these Powder River wells. The Powder River Basin is a place in Wyoming where there's a lot of oil and gas production and not a lot of pipeline. And the gas that's getting flared out there it's very high energy, very energy dense. And so in a place like that, Wyoming just passed regulation that says they're not going to tax any oil and gas producers who bring their gas to any stranded flare gas to market by mining Bitcoin.
Yeah,
right. So
Wyoming's pretty.
Exactly. But typically, when you sell gas, right, like if you sell the pipeline, you get taxed on it the moment that it comes out of the ground. Now they're actually. I know producers that are sprinting to Wyoming to get leases and get going. So
besides Texas, Wyoming, where are states should we get in for mining?
Any state that is rich in energy resources, whether that be a river and a hydroelectric facility. Certainly, I think the lower barrier opportunity is something like oil and gas, because in the United States, uniquely, when you buy land in the United States, oftentimes you don't just own land, you own all the shit to the center of the earth. Beneath the land, it's kind of wild, right? In every other country that belongs to the government, that's just normal. And here, you can own that in mineral rights. And so, Wyoming, I'm talking to a lot of guys in Kentucky, Oklahoma, a lot of oil and gas production. Kansas, absolutely. There's a lot of pipeline there, so there's a lot of guys that already have infrastructure, but they're getting shit deals for their gas, and so they're looking at this because this is a means by which for them to increase their revenue. Colorado even is great, but yeah, Texas, Wyoming, Pennsylvania, the Marcellus, Louisiana's got more natural gas than we're ever going to need. Everywhere. Anywhere. And also look at nation states, right? You start looking at nation states that are rich in energy resources. Iran, Venezuela, the UAE, Russia. Why do you think all the Bitcoin mining stories are coming out of those countries? Why is there always topics surrounding that? Because they know how practical and how pragmatic this is for them. I always say this, I say Bitcoin is relevant to everybody, but it's a little more relevant to energy producers. Just a little bit more.
How commercialized do you see this right now? Besides mom and pop shops, big energy firms, how?
Every energy producer is looking at Bitcoin mining right now. It's the hottest topic in oil and gas right now. Has been for, I'd say 5 months, 4 months, right? Since we saw 60,000 the first time, Bitcoin price is really what changes people's minds, right? That's really what gets people in the fucking rooms. Let's be real. We can all educate all we want. We can write as many blogs as possible. People don't reassess their own opinion until something shatters it, and Bitcoin's price shatters opinion. And so, I knew in 2018 oil and gas producers weren't going to buy these magic internet money machines. Bitcoin was $5,000. It was Mario coin. They were going to risk anything. But you put Bitcoin at $50,000, legitimizes it. Right now, these guys go maybe I should buy, at least I should try it. Maybe we could risk 20 grand on some magic internet money machines. What's the worst thing? We might make a shitload of money on our gas. Or we lost 20 grand and we figured out we don't want to build this stuff. That's a fad, it's stupid, we move on. right? Like there's guys that start evaluating that, and then what happens at $500,000? Then there's gonna be guys that say like, shit, we should have done this last time. We're already late, and they'll pay more to get in for less of a return, right? Is this a matter of if or a matter of when? So I mean, I often ask guys like, if you don't think Bitcoin's gonna die, then this isn't gonna go away, right? There will always be a price for your gas that's better than the pipeline potentially. So you might want to have a Bitcoin mine. Right? What happens at I talked to a producer in Kentucky who told me, he's like, beyond the MCF, beyond the dollars, beyond everything else, the thing that attracts me the most to this is the lack of counterparty risk. The fact that the pipeline company could wake up one day and say, hey, we don't want to buy your gas anymore. We want to give you no money for your gas, or you're just going to give it to us for free now. He has another option. He has somewhere else to go, and he doesn't have to rely on that. Like right now, they could destroy his whole business. The second he gets a Bitcoin mine, he's sovereign. He's a sovereign energy producer. Yeah.
I have a question about practically is that type of structure that you have up there, is that set up on just every individual well, or for every job site that you have to kind of do your own special build out and specs with your company when you're dropping one of those things in?
No. So it's a portable structure that can be moved anywhere you'd like it. And so you can pick this up, put it on a flatbed, drop it on another well pad, start generating power, electrify it, and start selling your gas again. It's a portable downstream market. That's what the Bitcoin network is. Right? I mean, the way I see the Bitcoin network, it's an autonomous energy consumption market. It's a place to sell energy for the first time in history without somebody purchasing your energy from you.
And a follow-up question then is, your company, does it mine and hold the Bitcoin, or does the owner of the well actually hold the Bitcoin and do the investment?
Yeah, so for the most part, we're teaching oil and gas producers how to become miners. Yeah, we're asking them to take the risk. Right? We're not buying the computers from them. I mean, we did in the beginning. Steve Barber started out that way because he had to. Because like I said, these guys weren't going to buy these computers. So what he did was he'd come in and say, hey, I'll mitigate your flare gas or your vent gas for free. And they were like, why? He's like, well, I'm mining this, Bitcoin stuff. Like, doesn't matter why. I'll mitigate your emissions for free. And a lot of times, you maybe you don't know this, right? So most don't. Certainly in Canada, every oil and gas producer has what's called an emissions profile, right? And so if you can lessen your emissions profile, you can go out and drill more wells. You can produce more oil. You actually have ceilings on how much oil you can produce based upon your emissions profile. So as a company, we were able to come in and say like, hey, for no charge, we'll reduce your emissions profile, which the monetary benefit to them was like, hell yeah, please. What do they do out there, And then inevitably, my boss realized if he charged them, if he said, no, I have to charge you to let me mine Bitcoin, right? They didn't like that, but it made them think, well, how much could a Bitcoin mine cost? And he said, yeah, that's what I want you to ask, because you should own this. This should be your equipment. I don't want to mine on your well. You should mine on your well. I want to build you the equipment so that you can be a better producer, because even if I come in and I mine on your well, that's going to be great for a year or two. But pretty soon you're not going to be afraid of Bitcoin anymore, and you're going to kick me out anyway. And you're going to buy your own computers because it's your cat, and you're going to do this yourself, right? You're not going to want me anymore. So I want you to get there already. I'm trying to help you. And now we're at a point where it's much better received, right? The numbers are even. What's funny is the numbers are even a little bit less attractive than they were certainly. Like during the 2017 bull market, there were guys in the oil field that were making an absolute killing. They had a little 50 kilowatt Chevy engine, and it was making like $1,800 a day on a little bit of gas, and they paid like 20 grand for it. I mean, it was a joke. It was like way too good to be true, because it was way too early, right? There's such disequilibrium currently that a kilowatt hour has not been properly priced for a long time. And what we're finding is the market is all over the place, and Bitcoin is the only sound, it's the only signal that's keeping any kind of tether to reality. Yeah.
Generically speaking, what's the average life of a mining unit? Not like your full-fledged unit, but just an individual.
Is Kaboom Racks in the room?
Yeah, you're looking at like maybe, depending on which model, 4 to 5 years. but its relevance has to do with the economic cycle, what's going on with Bitcoin as well.
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I mean, I've been mining. I bought used computers 2.5 years ago. They were 3 years old, and I bought like 50 of them, and I've had to replace like 7, but they're still going good. They were supposed to be obsolete. They were supposed to be best times, right? They were supposed to be non-economic, but here we are. Yeah.
Based on your experience, how do you like express the counter argument to the energy thing to the most general, basic audience that has no idea really what the price of kilowatt hours?
Right. I would say this. I would say, first of all, for one point is energy is not really ever consumed. It's always just converted, right? And so there's a false narrative out there that like consuming electricity, that plugging in your your phone or your blow dryer or something has like some kind of a one-to-one effect. Like when you plug in your blow dryer, like a tree like turns into ash or somewhere. Like that's kind of the image they put in everyone's head for the last 25 years. It's like I mean, they make people feel like they should be so guilty for letting their hot tub stay warm while they're on vacation. Like, even though they paid the fucking power bill. And like, I mean, why don't you yell at the power company? Like who do we demonize, right? We demonize Edison, or I guess someone else who actually probably invented electricity, right? I mean, it's like, at the end of the day, like, where do we go? And I think that's the false narrative, is that there's been a moralization of energy consumption. And that's a bullshit narrative, right? If you're willing to pay for, a unit of electricity, who the hell am I to say that you can't use it to, do whatever the hell you want? I mean, so long as you're not hurting people with it, right? So long as you're not using it as some weapon. Like, I don't give a fuck how you use electricity. It's yours to use, so long as you can afford it, and so long as, that's your business. I think that's the idea, is that there's been this, the ESG narrative specifically. I mean, it's getting pointed out, like I said, and first of all, they call it carbon, when really it's carbon dioxide is what we're talking about. The carbon dioxide, I think that the market tests showed it wasn't as scary, because some people know that they exhale carbon dioxide, and then they're not as afraid. Like, carbon just sounds like black coal or something, and so like the idea is this, we want to reduce carbon, and I think certainly we don't want bad air emissions. I think methane, CH4, that has an air quality impact that's not good. I mean, anybody that's smelled methane in the air, like, it's not fun to breathe, it's noxious, it's like 70 times heavier as a molecule than carbon dioxide. Plants don't consume it when they grow. Mitigating methane, absolutely, like, we need to get on this. I mean, there's no reason we should be wasting good methane right now. We have a market. But carbon dioxide, that's been wrapped into this moralization of energy consumption. I don't subscribe to it. I think it's falsified. I think it's under the pretense of, garnering subsidies, raising taxes to build intermittent power. That's my my personal feeling. How do I convey that? I tell people, don't guilt yourself for using electricity, because history has shown the more electricity we consume, the greater our life expectancy, life quality, education rates, birth rates. It's irrefutable. And so we're at a place where they're trying to demonize the one thing that allows us to advance as a civilization, as a species, which is electrical generation and consumption. And so, I push back against all of it, right?
Yeah, on that note, can you talk a little bit about the benefits of running the methane through the engine as opposed to just firing?
Yeah, that's a fair point. So I think, so why do a bunch of guys, why do oil and gas producers burn the gas, right, rather than just like letting it vent into the atmosphere? Well, for the reason I kind of talked about, right, that methane, CH4, is a heavy gas. It's 60, 80 times heavier than carbon dioxide. But when you combust it, the byproducts of combusting methane are H2O, water vapor, and CO2, carbon dioxide. And so, which is much more agreeable than methane. And so, typically a flare stack is there to mitigate emissions, right? A flare is to mitigate methane emissions, turn them into carbon dioxide emissions. However, a flare is not 100% efficient, right? Especially in high winds, like up in North Dakota and the Bakken, where there's 60-mile-an-hour wind. A lot of the times you can get as low as 65, 70% of that methane is getting combusted, but 30% is just spewing. It's just CH4 is going into the atmosphere. And so when you mine Bitcoin, when you run that CH4 into an engine, it's 100%, right? You're combusting every molecule of CH4 internally in that engine, and your only exhaust is CO2. And so, yeah, you're in a much better position.
Why can't you just cap the well, the natural gas well? Just like turn it off.
Well, you can. Okay, so natural gas wells, like stranded wells, you can.
Okay.
And nobody that has a stranded gas well is just opening it up to flare it. Right. So like, there's kind of maybe a terminology nuance here, right? So people talk about stranded energy or stranded gas. Oftentimes what they're talking about is somebody went out and drilled a well, maybe they were looking for oil even, right? They might have even been exploring for crude, but they found a natural gas reserve, tons of it. And so they capped the well, and they're kind of like just sitting on the property knowing they have a bunch of gas ready to go, waiting for somebody to build a pipeline, so maybe one day they'll get rich. And sometimes they might just sell it, so that's called, they drill, they complete the well, and then they cap it, they sell it. A producer comes in, does a deal with a pipeline company, he produces the well, and then he might just do a deal with a pipeline company, produce it for 6 months and flip it to somebody else, right, who's an operator. And so there's all these kind of levels to it. Right now what we're finding is there's a lot of guys who are like, hey, I know where there's a whole bunch of gas wells that have been capped, let's open them up to mine Bitcoin. I get a lot of phone calls about that. Those projects take a lot longer, more capital, they're usually a grander scale because they need to get a higher return for that gas, because it's not a byproduct of oil, it's the only hydrocarbon they have, right? It's the only resource in that investment, so they can't waste it ever. So yeah, they're either going to sit on it or they're not going to use it. They're not going to use it or they're going to mine Bitcoin or wait for a pipeline. They're not going to flare it. They're going to wait. Yeah.
I love what you did, by the way. But
Yeah.
can you talk more about how Bitcoin or whatever EMPs plugging into Bitcoin is equivalent of Bitcoin now plugging into them, in terms of how that can help all of us in terms of lobbyists, the organization, the media? They've been handling FUD for years on energy.
Yeah.
Have you seen that already yourself? Or
Yeah, I see. What I see is this gives producers like a pop in their step. Like I'm talking to guys that, first of all, these are the last guys to like become Bitcoin advocates, right? These are like a lot of these are tech phobic. They don't even want to use the computer very much. And I sit there and I convince them more or less like, listen, what you need to know how to do is keep an engine running well. And he's like, oh, well, I can do that. I'm like, okay, well then you can mine Bitcoin. Like, and you can probably mine it really well, better than most. So long as you can learn how to plug a computer in. And then pick up the phone and call me for spaceman, like I'll help you out. And so like what it's doing is I definitely see producers get like a pop in their step. They start getting excited about producing energy again. Where you're right, the oil and gas industry specifically has been vilified. They've been kicked in the teeth for 2.5 decades. Every cartoon show to, mainstream screenplay vilifies the oil and gas industry as like the mean, let's just destroy the planet and get rich doing it. And so this is fighting back because one, it shows how much oil and gas producers, they are wanting to be stewards. Trust me, no oil and gas producer wants to waste anything, okay? But if they can't deal with any type of waste, or they can't deal with some resource without it being an economic loss on the margin, they can't deal with it. Like that's the market, right? I can't just burn cash, right? So I'm not gonna build a pipeline to lose money. So that's the issue at hand. Is this just natural market forces, and now innovation is disrupting this industry, and really it's going to reprice every oil and gas well that's out there, right? Every oil and gas well now is going to be repriced by the Bitcoin, value.
So they're past like the narrative on flaring, and they're on to like the economics.
This is the thing, that it's such a disconnect. There's such a disconnect between the narrative of energy conservation and what is green, right? Like the green mantra. And I can spend a lot of time on that. What I will say is Bitcoin does not give a shit how you get that kilowatt hour. It will pay you the exact fucking same for your kilowatt hour, whether it came from a dam or whether it came from you running on a hamster wheel generating it. It doesn't care. It'll give you the same value for it. And that's immutable, right? Nobody can regulate that. Nobody can bastardize that. The market can be in disequilibrium, right? We can have times where there's maybe hardware shortages, and so we see, maybe some market players able to kind of crowd out or able to manipulate the market temporarily, but it will never last because, for once, we truly have an immutable signal. We have a signal that will, at the end of the day, when we want innovation, if we want this world to be a better place, people actually have to wake up in the morning and want to go build shit that makes it a better place. And usually what makes them do that is the idea of earning wealth, of being able to earn a piece for their own that will then give them a greater quality of life. And because that unit of account is getting fucked up more and more, what I see Bitcoin doing is causing an industrial re-revolution, right? A renaissance in energy production. Because guys are going to lay in bed at night. Maybe people in this room will lay in bed tonight, and you won't be able to sleep because you'll be thinking about all of the stranded energy around the world, right? All the rivers that don't have just a little turbine dropped into it, all the gas stations that have been closed down, but have a freaking light on inside, and they've just been wasting kilowatt hours. Because now a kilowatt hour is a sacred thing if you understand Bitcoin, right? I mean, trust me. I mean, we're literally sitting in this room. You guys maybe don't realize this, but there's been a Bitcoin miner here the entire time, right? And so like kilowatt hours to a Bitcoin miner, you see it everywhere. You start to see how energy, how mispriced it is, how out of mind it is to the average consumer. That's not going to last very long. Right? I think people on a Bitcoin standard will turn off the electricity to their hot tub when they go out of town, not because they want to conserve, because they're virtuous and good people, but because they don't want to pay the fucking bill when they do that. Right? Because they don't want to sacrifice any kilowatt hours. Because right now I'd say that a kilowatt hour has been artificially priced at a discount. Right? I think energy's been artificially cheap for a long time, and we're going to see a lot of disruption in that because Bitcoin's going to pay people, going to pay energy producers to shove the energy that way. And so what happens when oil and gas producers siphon off their pipelines and push it toward Bitcoin mining? Well, pipeline supply dips, price pops, and we find equilibrium. Right? It has to come up and compete with the Bitcoin network everywhere. Otherwise, everyone will just push their kilowatt hours to Bitcoin and forget the rest of it. And so that optionality is everything. Right? That second choice will change the world. Right? What do we go for? We think that at the end of the day, good products, right? I mean, there's great companies here. Good products are what bring people to Bitcoin, and just they don't get distracted by the shitcoins. They don't get distracted by any of these, nonsense that's out there, right? This ancillary investment. They participate with the Bitcoin network because of a good product, and now they understand it. Right? I mean, I talked to oil and gas producers that understand Bitcoin way better than I thought they would, way faster than I ever expected. Because they're interacting with it, they're curious to learn about it, and it happens, right? And then they're starting to talk about all the other industries that are screwed up and how this is going to be disrupted that I don't even think about, right? So this isn't just oil and gas, right? This is methane digesters. Everywhere there's a hog farm or a bunch of methane because of animals or landfills where they're generating power, all of them are disrupted. All of them are looking into Bitcoin mining. All of them are going to participate. I think everybody who has already negotiated a power contract because you own a commercial business, you're going to participate. You're going to want to because it'll be passive income for your business. So everyone's going to really, I think in the next 10 years, we're all going to have a better understanding of what a kilowatt hour is and really how it's priced, right? That's what we're building for.
Hey, we got to disagree. It looks like we're close to done. I got to disagree with something you said. You started by saying you were nothing special, man. You have amazing commandments.
Well, thanks so much. You guys can catch me later. I'd love to chat, drop a business card or something.
When can we get the black box?
Yeah, black
box.
box.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'll give 30 seconds. So black box is coming really quick. Like, we're in production. We got the final iteration. Steve just tweeted about it like 25, maybe an hour ago, that the final iteration is absolutely beautiful. It's going to be sent to production. Pre-sales, they closed on Friday. My entire week is going to be talking to all of whoever signed up for pre-sales and get you guys all the information you need and get the black box. So for anybody that doesn't know, we're selling one. We're coming out with a product called Black Box so that you can use one of these crazy loud Bitcoin miners at home, but you can drop it somewhere in your backyard. It's an all-weather outdoor box, right? The rain's not going to get to it. It makes about 40 decibels of noise, same as like an air conditioner, but if it's in your backyard or inside your house, it's not going to bother anybody. It's a little fun. So that way anybody, you got 7 cent power at your house. These newer machines are making 42 cents per kilowatt hour. Like you're going to have a $300 power bill and $1,300 in Bitcoin every month right now at today's rate. So it's Everybody should be arbitraging their electric bill. Everybody should be deleting their Coinbase Pro account. Buy a miner, buy Bitcoin through your power bill, and stop giving your fucking information to everybody like that kind professor told us just earlier. Start buying Bitcoin. So cheers, guys.